Tonight we begin the holiday of Shavuot, and one of the things we do on this holiday is we read Megillat Ruth, the book of Ruth. One of the things I find most striking about Megillat Ruth is how quiet it is, especially for a text we read on Shavuot when we celebrate the giving of the Torah. There's no revelation, no thunder, no splitting sea, no dramatic prophecy, just two widows trying to survive in what was likely an incredibly challenging world for unmarried women with no male family support. And yet, somehow, this very human, grounded story becomes one of the central texts through which the rabbis ask us to think about covenant, responsibility, and Jewish belonging. The turning point of the Megillah comes on the road back from Moab. Naomi tells Ruth to leave, to return home, to rebuild her life somewhere else. And honestly, from Naomi's perspective, it's a pretty reasonable suggestion. Ruth owes her nothing. But Ruth answers with one of the most famous lines in Tanakh. Al tifke'i vi la'azvach. Don't urge me to leave you. Ki el asher telchi elech. Where you go, I will go. Amech ami. Your people will be my people. Ve'elohayich Elohai. And your God my God. What always stood out to me about Ruth's words is that she doesn't speak first about belief. She speaks about peoplehood. Amech ami. Your people will be my people. Before theology, before ideology, before certainty, there's a decision to bind herself to a people and a shared fate. And I think that this is massively significant because Ruth is not entering a story that promises comfort or security. She's a Moabite widow traveling into an unfamiliar society with no real guarantees of how she'll be received. Boaz later recognizes exactly what this commitment costs her. He says, "V'tazvia vich ve'imech." You left your father and mother, ve'eret moladtich, and the land of your birth, v'telchi el am asher lo yadat, and went to a people you didn't know. Ruth chooses uncertainty, vulnerability, and obligation, becoming the first true ger in our tradition. While we know that Abraham and Sarah drew followers to the worship of Hashem, and other biblical figures like Moshe's wife Tzipporah were foreigners who joined or at least lived amongst the Jewish people, Ruth's story is the first to outline a formal transition into the covenant. And I think that's part of why we read this Megillah on Shavuot, because Matan Torah itself is not just a spiritual experience. It's the formation of a covenantal people. At Sinai, Bnei Yisrael aren't simply given a set of beliefs or private spiritual practices. They enter into a brit, a covenant that binds them to Hashem, to one another, and to a collective future. And Ruth, in her own quieter way, undergoes a similar movement, not through revelation and spectacle, but through loyalty, presence, and commitment. What I find challenging about Ruth is that she doesn't wait for certainty before committing herself. I think people today, and honestly, I would probably include myself in this, often want commitment to feel emotionally sustainable before we enter fully into it. We want clarity first, stability first, some reassurance about how things are going to turn out. But covenant in Judaism has never really worked that way. A lot of Jewish life begins with showing up before resolution, with remaining present before you know exactly where the road leads. And I think Ruth understands something deeply important about that belonging isn't only about feeling connected, it's also about accepting responsibility for something larger than yourself. For a people, for a tradition, for a future you may not fully live to see. Which is why I think the ending of the Megillah matters so much. It ends not with a private spiritual moment for Ruth, but with genealogy, with continuity, with the beginning of the Davidic line, introducing Ruth as the great-grandmother of King David. The story moves outwards, beyond Ruth herself. Because the deepest commitments in Jewish life are rarely about the self. They're about what becomes possible because someone chose to stay connected to something larger than themselves. Shavuot Sameach and Shabbat Shalom.